The controversial Walt Animatronic is still on its way at Disneyland Resort, going into the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln space. However, a few months back, it sounded like one of the grandchildren of Walt Disney himself said they don't want this happening. Now, the Walt Disney Company says the grandkids are approving of this, but we're hearing some conflicting stories on that. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is the man who knows everything about every theme park ever, even the ones in Abu Dhabi, Mr. VashSky. Vash, tell me something about a theme park in Abu Dhabi.
Ooh, a theme park in Abu Dhabi. Well, it's interesting because Disney actually wanted to set up shop there for a little while.
Oh, that's true. But I need to cut you off. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to set you up to interrupt you. We need to talk about Walt. And I don't think he dreamed about putting a theme park in Abu Dhabi. But Disneyland News Today has this story by Shannon Ace. Some of Walt Disney's grandchildren approve of the new audio animatronic of their grandfather that will debut at Disneyland next year, saying it's stellar and as accurate as possible. That is so very specific right there. I don't mean to make this a media literacy thing right at the start of it, but why is that the headline, Vash?
Well, I guess stellar could be looked at in multiple ways, I'm guessing. And well, we know that Walt Disney World News Today, they've been on a positive bench lately when it comes to covering the Walt Disney parks. So this is obviously a very controversial move to put Walt Disney in animatronic form in any of their parks, especially Disneyland. And I don't know, perhaps good coverage. It's good for the company, I suppose.
That's very true. And the reason that I think that they are covering this in a specific way here on WDWNT is some of their previous coverage here. This is Joanna Miller. She is the daughter of Diane Miller and also the granddaughter of Walt Disney. This is back from August of last year. August of this year. The year's not over yet, Jonas. Joanna Miller says, "Everyone, please stop the madness. Do not let them turn Grandpa into a robot. My mom tried to stop this years ago, and they respected her wishes. There is plenty of film so people can see him and hear him talk. He has told you everything on TV show lead-ins." Sorry, this is forgive me with the punctuation here. It's a little difficult. "He has told you everything on TV show lead-ins and specials. Everyone who stepped forward when Uncle Robert's house was going to be destroyed, and you did it. Thank you. We have that protected because of all of you. Please help protect the memory and legacy of Grandpa." Uncle Robert here, I think, is referring to Bob Iger at this point, Vash, unless you want to put forward a different theory on who he is.
Yeah, that's funny. No, this was referring to a specific incident in which one of the homes that Walt resided in when he was a child, especially an aspiring animator, was going to be sold. And it was actually a collective of Disney enthusiasts who actually banded together, I believe with the help of Mice Chat, who arranged that whole thing.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're able to buy the house and donate it and keep it as a historical piece. And I believe the last time, I actually walked past that house some time ago, and it was actually in the process of being refurbished completely. So some good stuff there. I think that's what she's referring to.
Well, this is why we have Vash on the channel, because he is a true Disney historian here. And he's the kind of guy that even if he didn't get paid to do it, I think he would probably keep track of all this stuff anyhow. So let's go back to today's story, because Disney has apparently found some people that are blood relatives of Walt who are willing to go to bat for this right here. The audio animatronic is part of the Walt Disney A Magical Life, a new show at the Main Street Opera House in Disneyland, set to debut on May 16th, 2025, as part of the resort's 70th anniversary celebration. It's the first time Walt Disney will be brought to life as an animatronic, a technology he pioneered with Imagineers. It will use new technology and archival voice record. Sorry, I'm going to say that again. It will use new technology and archival voice recordings. In July of 2023, They invited the Walt Disney Family Museum Board of Directors to view progress on the animatronic. And the museum was founded by Walt's daughter, Diane Disney Miller, also the husband of former Disney Company CEO Ronald Miller.
Mm.
So here are some of the issues here. Walt's grandson and Diane's eldest child, Chris Miller, said in a statement shared by the Orange County Register that Imagineering's work to that point was stellar, and they were very eager to be as accurate as possible in creating this. We came away confident that this is the right group to take on this important project. Walt's granddaughter, Tamara Miller, said, "We believe that our grandfather would have been enthusiastic about the project and fascinated by the advancements of the audio animatronic technology that was first developed during his days at WED, now Imagineering, a technology that he was always passionate about," something from the museum's director. But that's not where this stops. Here's the big however. However, Joanna Miller, who we referenced before, another of Diane's children, quickly spoke out against the show, saying, "I'm overwhelmed with disgust and anger. Mom would be ready to fight. I think it shows a lack of respect for Grandpa," and started a letter writing campaign since then to abandon the robot of Grandpa, that the animatronic would be an imposter and they are dehumanizing Walt. According to Joanna Miller, retired Imagineers have told the current Imagineers that creating the animatronic is out of bounds. And here we go, in all caps. "Most importantly," Miller wrote, "I learned that Grandpa told Sam McKim that he never wanted to be an animatronic." Vash, I've got an idea. Why don't we build a Bob Iger animatronic?
Yeah.
And then we can have it say whatever, we can use some archival recordings of Bob Iger so that it will only say things that Bob Iger has already said. And then we know that could never be used in a disrespectful way that would be against the wishes of Bob Iger. How about that?
I mean, I think it's a very interesting idea. You might as well, at least in that case, Bob Iger would still be alive. So I would assume that he'd have at least some say into what he said. But now you're taking somebody who is the founder of this company, somebody who's been long past. By the way, yesterday was his 123rd birthday. I don't know if you know that, Jonas, but that was pretty cool. And this is how they honor him on such a day. They announced that he's going to be represented in audio-animatronic form on May 16th of next year. I'll say this, Jonas. Joanna Miller has been on a tear to stop this from happening. Here's the original Facebook post in which her words were sourced from on the article we just looked at right here. And I'm surprised that Tamara was in support of this and suggesting that Walt would be, he'd be enthusiastic about this idea. Look, he was enthusiastic about audio animatronics technology. That is absolutely for sure. But he was very, very, very opposed to have him represented in the parks in any way, which is kind of interesting because it's like, well, it's the Walt Disney Company, it's Walt Disney World, it's all these things. But putting your name on something very different than putting your likeness onto something. And he was just, frankly, super opposed to it. I remember back in the day, Jonas, where the partner statue was a very controversial move to have Walt Disney represented in that way so prominently in those parks. Now, with the passage of time, we see it as synonymous with parks like Disneyland and Walt Disney World, at the hubs and so forth. And now we have different versions of those, like storytellers, for example. Mm-hmm. But, this stuff you got to get right. I remember I'm reminded of this.
Yes, I was wondering if we were going to talk about this.
Yes, the AI version of Walt Disney that the company spent, I believe, a considerable amount of time and resources on to portraying Walt in AI form for the traveling roadshow that was embarked by the company as part of the 100th anniversary that just recently took place.
Right. So this is uncanny. This entire thing, it doesn't quite come off like the actual Walt Disney. There's a couple of interesting little quirks of the way he moves himself. It's not quite the right mannerisms. He's holding his hands in a way that makes sense for current more popular postures. But what they don't understand is that's a cigarette holding posture, which I don't know what actor they decided to merge this performance with, but they're not quite getting Walt himself. He's a little too young. He's a little too spry. He's a little too smiley, and the hands are not quite right. It's slightly more effeminate than we're used to seeing Walt. Now, Walt himself, if you read the biographies, and if you believe the biographies, some of them are more accurate than others. Walt himself was not necessarily in his later life, talking about the 1960s here, as crazy about that Walt persona, that Uncle Walt persona that he put on for the wonderful world of Disney on ABC, or the character where he was playing a character when he was in the parks and walking around. There's of course some of that where anyone has a public persona when they're as important as influential as Walt Disney. There's a slight amount of pushback that you get in there in the Saving Mr. Banks film where he talks about Tom Hanks in that portrayal talks about the being raised by Elias Disney, and also in the fact that you don't see him smoke, but you do see him put a cigarette out in a scene. Like they're pushing to maybe a slightly more realistic image in the same context of still that Uncle Walt persona that they're using there. I don't know that I will ever trust the current Walt Disney Company to do this well. I look at what they've done with people like Jim Henson, who they are obviously now getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D if the cowards end up going through with that, unless they I'm sorry if you are listening to this and you're one of the people who have made that decision. I think the word coward is accurate. This is a company that does not respect the people that came before, but they're happy to trade on the legacy of those people that they don't respect. So I think they want the brand of Disney and they want to rewrite this person into something that he was not. I've seen this at a lot of Fortune 500 companies, especially in the age of DEI. And forgive me for going political on this, but a lot of large corporations will try to take the founding myths of their corporations from even 50 or 100 years previous and try to say that that person would have been totally fine with whatever is happening now. And they'll try to implant values that did not exist at the time that that person was alive or did not exist in the way that we understand those values to exist now. So I'm not saying that Walt Disney would be for or against anything specific at the company, but I know for a fact that he would be against being an animatronic in this park. He did not want to be a robot in his own park because I think he saw that as a marketing tool, a propaganda tool, a storytelling tool. And unless he was literally saying the words himself as that Uncle Walt character, you notice he never showed up animated in any of his own films. He had that fully within his power. He didn't do anything like that. I don't want to go on too long on this idea, but I think it's very easy to understand why Walt Disney would not want to be a puppet of the Walt Disney Corporation. In fact, some of his best moments were in retaliation against losing control of his image at the Walt Disney Company.
Oh, absolutely. I completely 100% agree. It's quite interesting because the Walt Disney Company at a certain point had kind of gotten away from him, like you said, Jonas, and it's fascinating to kind of see his foray and where that started into theme parks because it was definitely rebelling against that system. I think is what you were referring to, and Roy and Walt had a real disagreement when Roy was trying to protect his brother and attempt to officially acquire some of those assets, like his stake in Disneyland, his stake in Imagineering, and so forth. It was a big tumultuous time for the company. I believe they didn't speak to each other for about 6 months because Walt felt like he was losing a part of him at that same time. So he really took these things he was very passionate about these things, took them very seriously, and yeah, he was very much against any representation of him in the parks whatsoever outside of his name and Rhett Law and all those kind of things. But Lillian, Diane, they were super opposed to this. So I am surprised that you do have family members who are kind of like coming out and saying, "Oh, this is great, this is wonderful," when the people closest to Walt in his life, they had gone to their graves actually. advocating against stuff like this. So it's just very interesting.
Yeah, with that, I think we probably need to throw it to the commenters here. What do you think about this situation? Is this something where, by the way, Vash, actually, I need to ask, is this replacing Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, or is this something that will alternate in the same theater?
I'm unclear as to that. There's some talk that these things will alternate. There's some talk that Walt Disney will actually introduce the show officially, and then Lincoln will end it. So we're gonna have to see on what the company ends up doing right here. I believe Walt is going to be the introductory piece for Great Moments, Mr. Lincoln, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that's the problem when you make your name the brand. With that being said, guys, like this video if you like this video. Please let us know your thoughts on the comment section down below. There's been a little bit of opinion in this one. There's been a lot of trying to talk about the history and trying to interpret the history of the man himself and his relationship with the company. Obviously, the company has won because at some point we all pass away, and what's left is left for other people to handle that. That being said, thank you so much for being here. And if you haven't done it yet, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media account.